Hello, today we're going to continue our discussion of developmental psychology. Up to this point, we've discussed various aspects of both physical development and cognitive development. Today we're going to focus on social development, and I would like to begin by talking about stranger anxiety and separation anxiety. If you will recall, when we discussed Piaget's theory of cognitive development, one of the things we mentioned was that in his first stage, the sensory motor stage, young children develop object permanence, where they realize that objects exist when they can't see them anymore. Well, object permanence allows children eventually to experience separation anxiety. You might think, is that a good thing? And as it turns out, it is, because we all need to learn how to tolerate separation from our parents when we are young. Uh, it's an important developmental process that everyone needs to go through. As we'll see, most young children develop what's called secure attachment, and those who are securely attached deal with separation anxiety pretty well, and then they move on from that phase as they get a little older. So there's also stranger anxiety. And in stranger anxiety, also a normal process that we go through, children become uneasy when they are around strangers. Both separation anxiety and stranger anxiety usually appear during the second half of the first year of life, and then they eventually um, dissipate. You can see how a certain amount of stranger anxiety would be important so that a child just won't walk off with just anybody that they might meet um, at a very vulnerable time in their lives when they're young. And thinking about uh, separation anxiety and also stranger anxiety, it brings us to a consideration of the importance of attachment. We all have significant attachments with other people in our lives. When we are young, of course, the people to whom we are most likely to be strongly attached are our caregivers, our mothers, our fathers, our grandparents, or perhaps other people who are in a caregiver role. But our attachment refers to the emotional tie that we have with another person. As we grow up, we develop attachments to other people as well, including other family members, friends, and romantic partners. As it turns out, our relationships with others that are based on our ability to form healthy attachments are essential to our psychological development and to our well-being. When you're around young children, one of the things that you will notice is how they use their attachment figures, their parents say, as their secure base. When they go into an unfamiliar environment, they may initially be a little bit apprehensive and they hold on to their parents, perhaps even cling to them. But they watch their parents to see how their parents react in this situation. That, by the way, is called social referencing. And in part based on their parents' reaction and also their growing familiarity with a new environment, they may feel more comfortable exploring that environment. They may get down on the floor, crawl around, walk around, check stuff out, check out people who might be in the room and things like that. But if anything happens and they feel the least bit uncomfortable, they're probably going to quickly return to their mother or father or other attachment figure, want to be held, want to hold on to their leg or something like that until they feel calm again. So in these situations, they are using their go-to person, their attachment figure, as their secure base. As it turns out, it's very important that infants have such people in their lives who can function in this role because it helps the child to learn an important way of soothing him or herself by being in close proximity with the child's attachment figure. And then as we grow older, we learn self-soothing methods that help us to be able to do that more on our own without having to be in close proximity with our attachment figure. But even when we're adults, for many of us, and this may be true for you as well, who is perhaps the first person or among the initial people that you turn to if you're distressed? If you said your mother or your father, you're certainly not alone, because these people in our lives continue to be very important attachment figures for most of us, really throughout our lives. In the mid 1950s, a psychologist named Harry Harlow was interested in studying attachment, and for ethical reasons, because of the kind of study he wanted to do, he needed to use animals instead of humans. So he chose rhesus monkeys. It's an interesting study where he separated these baby monkeys from their mother at birth, and he raised them on surrogate mothers. Surrogate meaning like a false mother or a substitute mother, I guess would be a better way of putting it. So he had two different kinds of surrogate mothers, and you can see them in this picture. One is covered by soft terry cloth over the wire mesh body. The other is only the wire mesh body, but with a milk bottle extending from it, where the monkey got its nourishment. So Harlow was interested in trying to figure out, is it primarily contact comfort, that is the touch, feel experience that the monkey received from the terry cloth mother, or is it primarily feeding that facilitates attachment? And what he found was that it was primarily the contact comfort that the rhesus monkeys received from their terry cloth covered surrogate mothers. Here we see a monkey attaching to the surrogate mother, as you can see, but then reaching over to get milk from the wire-covered mother. Harlow did an interesting study where he raised his monkeys in this way, and then he introduced a foreign object into their environment. It happened to be a sort of a scary kind of a toy that made a lot of noise, to see how the monkeys would react. And what he found was that the monkeys hurried to their cloth-covered surrogate mother, their secure base, in order to be comforted, and then they would reach over to get milk from the other monkey, as we see in this picture. So according to Harlow, it's more touch, being held, contact comfort, even more than being fed, that contributes to the development of secure attachment. Of course, when parents are able to respond effectively to the needs of their young children, whatever those needs are, in a consistent and predictable way, those children are more likely to develop trust and a secure attachment with their caregivers. Another person who did some interesting research on attachment, in this case using humans, was Mary Ainsworth. And Mary Ainsworth developed this interesting experimental model she called the strange situation. It basically consisted of a room with a one-way observation mirror in it where uh, one could record what was going on in the room. And she had some toys in the room and a chair in the room. And the mother and the infant would come into the room together. And Ainsworth and her colleagues, they would observe and record what was going on with the infant. And then eventually a stranger would come in the room. And then the mother would leave. And the stranger would leave, and the infant was in there all by herself. And the mother would come back in the room. So the researchers were looking at what happens to the infant and the infant's relationship with the mother in these different conditions. Based on that research, Ainsworth was able to identify different kinds of patterns of attachment that emerge in infancy. The most common type of attachment, the most frequent one, was secure attachment, which is a healthy form of attachment. This is what we hope infants will develop, secure attachment. With this kind of attachment, the infants use their mother as a secure base. And when the mother left the room, they showed mild discomfort, but they got over it and they were comforted and reassured when the mother returned. But Ainsworth also identified two types of insecure attachment: anxious attachment and avoidant attachment. Anxiously attached infants showed an interesting sort of mixed reaction where on the one hand, they tended to cling to their mothers, but when the mother left and they showed a lot of distress when the mother left, but when the mother returned, they sometimes they would express anger towards the mother. On the other hand, the avoidantly attached infants didn't show much of a connection with the mother, didn't seem to be as distressed when the mother left or comforted when the mother returned. Here in this picture, we see a little baby rhesus monkey who's in great distress when separated from its mother. One of the fascinating and important results of research on attachment is the finding that the attachment patterns that we develop early in life tend to follow us throughout life and influence the kinds of relationships we have as we grow up and even into adulthood. An interesting line of research has looked at different attachment patterns in romantic relationships in adolescence and adulthood, finding that individuals who were securely attached when they were younger are more likely to be securely attached in their adult relationships. Similarly, as adults, individuals who are insecurely attached are more likely to have insecure attachments in their relationships later in life. When you think about your own relationship history and that of other people that you know, I imagine that you probably have observed that or maybe even experienced that. For example, if we are in a secure relationship with someone else, we trust that person. We have a balance between separateness and togetherness in the relationship. We don't have to seek constant reassurance that the person likes us or cares about us. We're not suspicious of that they might um, prefer someone else to us. And we're also able to open up, and they are able to open up if they have a secure attachment and share themselves in meaningful ways with us. I would encourage you to think about your own relationship history and perhaps examples of these kinds of attachment that you might see in your own relationships and those of others. If we aren't able to develop secure attachments early in life, it is possible that through corrective kinds of life experiences, we may grow towards a more secure attachment. With young children, the earlier those experiences occur, those healthy corrective experiences, the better in their ability to develop secure attachment patterns. If something happens early in our lives that is traumatic to us, not only might that affect our attachment behavior, but it can even affect how our brain develops, especially if the trauma is something that's ongoing. It can affect our brain development in ways that may subsequently affect how we experience and express emotion, how we deal with stress in our lives, and that kind of thing. On the other hand, some children who go through difficult times, they will uh, show resilience where they can bounce back. And it's a great strength to have this trait. You may be such a person yourself who has gone through some really difficult times, but you've been able to bounce back to learn and grow from those experiences. And they've helped you to become the person you are today in good ways. Another topic I'd like to discuss with you today that has to do with our psychosocial development is the kind of experiences we have growing up with our own parents and taking a look at the research on different kinds of parenting styles. A way of thinking about parenting styles is to think about two dimensions on which parents have been studied. One dimension we might call support. And parents who are high in support, they tend to be engaged with their children. They are interested in their feelings and their life experiences and nurturing in their manner of relating to their children. The other dimension we might call control. And parents who are high in the control dimension, they are able to be firm with their children. They can set limits with their children. They may be strict, but if they also are high in the support dimension, they provide both of those kinds of experiences for their children. Another way some people describe it is love and limits. Love for support, limits for control. Well, some interesting research has been done by Diana Baum-Rind and some others where they've looked at different types of parenting styles. And they've identified 4 different parenting styles: authoritarian, permissive, negligent, and authoritative. On this slide, we see some of the outcomes of these different parenting styles. But first, I'd like to talk with you a little bit about each parenting style in terms of, is it high or low in support and control? And then as we do that, we'll look at the outcomes of these different parenting styles. Let's start with the authoritarian kind of parent. Authoritarian parents are high in control but low in support. They tend to have more of a my way or the highway sort of approach to parenting. It's not that they don't love their children, but they show their love by being strict. And they tend not to be so supportive in a nurturing kind of way. So researchers have found in general that children who grow up with authoritarian parents tend to have lower social skills and self-esteem, and they may overreact when they make mistakes because they may have a history of others around them, their parents overreacting to those mistakes. Permissive parents, on the other hand, are high in support but low in control. They are more like their kid's friend than their parent. They don't provide that much in the way of structure or limits, but they are quite nurturing, loving, and supportive in how they interact with their children. And it has been found in general that kids who grow up with mainly permissive parents tend to be more aggressive and immature. Negligent parents are low in both support and control. This is the uh, least desirable of the different parenting styles because the children aren't getting either one. They're not getting love, they're not getting limits. And they tend to have poor academic and social outcomes, as you can see. The best kind of parenting style for most children is the authoritative parenting style, because with this parenting style, uh, children are getting the best of both. They're getting support and they are getting control. Their parents are engaged with them, they're interested in them, they talk with them, they're affirming, they're supportive, they're nurturing, they're loving, they're caring in demonstrable ways. But they're also able to set limits and have rules and consequences. So they are able to achieve this balance between love and support with their children. And as you can see, the children of authoritative parents tend to have the best outcomes. They tend to have better self-esteem, greater self-reliance, self-regulation, and social competence. So I would like to ask you to think about your parents. What sort of parenting style would best characterize your parents? Sometimes, if you were raised by 2 parents, sometimes both parents have the same parenting style and sometimes they differ. One might be more authoritarian and one might be more authoritative or even permissive. So think about that and what kind of experiences you've had growing up and how it's influenced you, and also what kind of parent you would like to be one day that you could picture yourself becoming. And when that day comes that you meet somebody that you might uh, entertain marriage with, among other things, I hope you'll talk about parenting because it's a very important topic. And the more parents can be on the same page in how they look at parenting and how they respond to their children, where they can be consistent and supportive of one another in their parenting efforts, the better off it is for everyone concerned. That's all for today's discussion about developmental psychology. I look forward to talking with you again soon, a little bit more about this particular topic. See you then.